Right. So I don't even like to interrupt, even when we're starting doing a video. So I'm here with a couple of wise guys, Jeff and Morgan Miller. We're going to be talking about.
Now everybody knows our names. They're going to come kill us.
I was just thinking, he called us wise. Apparently, this knows me.
Yeah, I think he means from that TV show Wise Guy, about that guy.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
But that's actually what Morgan wants. Morgan wants to be on the run. Wants to be people chasing him.
Yeah.
I would not advise people to chase him down because they might come a cropper.
Come a cropper, eh?
I don't speak British.
You might come a cropper.
Well, I don't think it would be wise for anybody to chase Morgan. With intent in their heart. Not intent. I mean intent to harm in their heart. Blimey. Right. You got Stan's ex asking him why he doesn't wear a watch. Why doesn't she wear a watch? And then he had a good night.
Well,
I have an internal clock that manages to get me just about everywhere late.
yeah.
So we know he's a pursuer. Yet more evidence that Munch is a pursuer.
So anyway, we are reviewing Homicide: Life on the Street.
Yeah.
End Game, which was the 15th episode of the 3rd season.
The real 15th episode.
Yeah, the real 15th episode, the 14th broadcast. Originally aired on NBC February 10th, 1995. The episode was written by Rogers Turrentine and directed by Lee Bonner. No, the story was by James Yoshimura and Henry Brommel. This episode continues a storyline about the shooting of Bo Felton, Kay Howard, and Stanley Bolander. So, Barnfather gives Homicide 48 hours to solve the case of the detective shootings before it is handed over to the Violent Crimes Unit. The investigation, still led by Frank Pimbleton, leads to a new prime suspect, Gordon Pratt, the resident of the apartment the detectives had mistakenly approached when trying to serve a warrant to Glenn Fulton. Bayliss, Drummond, and Pimbleton search Pratt's home, where they find a collection of books and magazines, his parents' house, where Pratt's parents turn out to be oblivious to his criminal past, and workplace before tracking him down in a massage parlor. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Bolander, Felton, and Howard are in various stages of recovery from their surgeries. Munch and Bolander's ex-wife stay with Bolander to keep him company. He seems fine after his first surgery, but awakens after his second surgery with no memory of who Munch is. In the box, the detectives alternate interrogating Pratt, who reveals himself to be a racist but highly educated loner with a grudge against the concepts of government and society. Bayliss, however, finds Pratt's high school records and discovers that Pratt's intellectualism is a ruse. Hoping to rattle a confession out of him, Pimbleton tricks Pratt into attempting to translate a passage from Plato, but unlike Pimbleton, Pratt cannot read the original Greek, and his radical misinterpretation of Plato's words reveal that he is a fake. Unfortunately, this strategy backfires on Pimbleton when an angered Pratt demands a lawyer. The attorney arranges Pratt's release, leading to rising tensions within the homicide unit and even a physical altercation between Munch and Pimbleton. In the episode's epilogue, Bayliss is called to a crime scene and discovers that Pratt has been shot. Reporters question Bayliss whether a police officer seeking revenge for the shootings may have been responsible. So, that's the recap there. Do you want me to read?
You're gonna do Dave? Oh, you've done that. That was what's he called? That guy, David, or was that David B2K?
No, that was just the recap. Do you want?
Yeah, let's do that guy, because then I'll move the files across because I took some VLC snaps.
We'll hear that guy.
I think there could have been a bad accident with on set with Richard Belzer could have had his head. The way he went against that door, he could have had a head injury.
That's dedication, folks. Okay, so David B226 Morris on July 11th, 2005 said, Homicide hasn't been playing by the rules in the entire detective shot storyline, and they don't stop in Endgame either. Tradition suggests that the killer be found and arrested by the end of the episode, but in the great tradition of Homicide, we don't even know if the detectives found the real shooter. Gordon Pratt seems like the shooter. His behavior corresponds with that of the killer, and he behaves like a guilty man, but we never get a straight answer one way or the other. Certainly, we get absolutely no indication from Pratt himself, though considering his appearance and his attitude, we think he did it. Portraying Gordon Pratt is noted character actor Steve Buscemi. By now, he has built up a reputation for being the quintessential eccentric criminal, which makes sense because, well, he looks like a weasel. But Gordon Pratt is a very meaty role. He appears to be an academic, philosophic racist, the kind of people who form militias out in Montana or West Virginia. He has a lot of intellectual books, Homer, Sophocles, and Marx, in his rundown apartment, a predilection for guns, and a real sense of being a wannabe. For most of the episode, he talks a good game, trying to sound like an intellectual gentleman. But it becomes pretty clear that it's a facade, and he is a little better than a thug. The interrogation scene between Pembleton and Pratt is an exceptional scene. Pembleton seems like the same cold, ruthless interrogator that he always does, until we get a clearer picture of Pratt. He never graduated from high school, he doesn't understand Plato, and he certainly can't read it in the original Greek. He makes a feeble attempt to translate the passage, then gets one-upped when Pembleton, who had a classical education, interprets the page with no trouble. Then Frank falters. Having exposed Pratt's ignorance, he rubs it in the man's face, a move which angers Pratt into finally calling in a lawyer. With only circumstantial evidence, he cannot be held, and he walks out of the station. We then get another scene in which Pratt walks out by a parade of police looking at him coldly. Then comes the wrap-up in which temperatures come to a head. Munch is pissed at Pembleton for blowing the interrogation and letting his emotions compromise him. This is ironic considering Frank's behavior up to now. Most of the detectives leave angry, which, given the nature of Pratt's crime, leads to something that has probably been inevitable. Do the search and interrogation of Pratt take much of the episode? Though the search and interrogation of Pratt take up much of the episode, we do see some more of the detectives recovering. Felton is feeling well enough so he can be released. Bolander seems all right, but slips back into a coma while talking to Munch, requiring him to have an operation to relieve the pressure on the brain, something that may have given him amnesia. Howard, though she's still in pretty bad shape, is finally awake and seems like she'll get through. The detective parts of them haven't changed, though. Bo goes to Kay and tells her that he thinks it was his fault for the shooting because he didn't come in the building first, and since he was a better shot, maybe he wouldn't have gotten shot. But Kay is standing firm. She was the primary. She goes in first. A cop is a cop. We also get some insight into their colleagues. Reporter Rhonda Overby talks to the detectives while they walk in and out of the squad room. Bayliss, as you might expect, seems the most optimistic, Pembleton the most cool and firm, but there are some surprising reactions. Lewis is incredibly pissed off and delivers a foul diatribe, while Munch is still reeling from the shooting, though he does come up with a bit of Munchian wit when Overby asks him who cops talk to relieve their stress. Reporters. I also liked his line about life is stress by definition. It is clear that there is a lot of anger still around, and eventually perhaps someone finds an outlet for it. 2 hours after leaving police custody, Pratt is found shot in the lobby of his hotel. 911 never comes, and Bayliss is the only cop who appears on the scene. No one will miss him, but there are implications that when confronted by it, he must face that someone he knows might have done it. He faces it more in the... Well, okay. Not much of a release, huh? In-game doesn't feature any of the usual behavior or investigation from the police shooting. The guilty man may have gotten away with a murder, or a cop might have killed an innocent, if unsavory man. There's no closure here, not for the police or for the audience, and that's how real life works too. Fontana and friends may not have liked using violence in this case, but dramatically it paid off in spades. My score 9. So, what do you think, then?
Well, the ending, that little twist, that's very good. And like I said, anything that breaks the formula is good. The character was peculiar in... well, I mean, even before he was revealed to be a phony, even the things he was saying were ridiculous anyway. Right, we got here. So, yeah, there was the stands at Munch's Perceiverina. Oh, So we got this here. Then I'll. So we got that there teleplay. Then I'll go back on camera before we go through the. So I've got here. Yeah, Munch, when he said I have an internal clock that manages to get me just about everywhere late. So yeah, I like the little moments when they went to visit Pratt's parents. The aptly named Pratt, because that's what a person is in England is called, a Pratt, like that. He is actually a Pratt. When he said, "You called him long distance." It was his birthday. I wanted to wish him happy birthday. That was a nice little moment. I thought the actress playing Kay Howard was good at sounding unwell.
She was good at what?
Sounding unwell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought Ned Beatty was good at that, too, for Bolander and his brief speaking.
Because there was a series in England called Casualty where you'd have people in hospital and they'd just be talking. Like, is that not hurting you? I mean, it's like... And you notice the good ones, they actually know how to act ill or injured. You can feel the pain with them.
Sometimes you don't feel like talking, have the energy when you're not in the hospital, but much less when you've been shot. Kind of
I mean, she actually took it to an extreme where she had to concentrate to understand what she was saying. Kay Howard.
Yeah.
So she sort of walked that line quite well. And there were bits that I didn't quite understand, but there weren't important bits, I don't think, from context. Oh yeah, then we had this. I'll go back to the grabs to actually show. There's a little. With it may or may not have been in the script. It may have been added. We got this guy here looking at the woman all the while. Doesn't look at Frank until he snaps his fingers in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was an interesting scene about G's observational skills. You know, when he was talking about the description and the glasses, things like that, and maybe people are getting their emotions, of their discipline. What have we got here? Oh yeah, do they record the sessions in the box? Because I've never seen a tape recorder.
I think the only time I actually remember that up to this point was in the very first episode.
I remember some.
Yeah, there may have been since then. I don't remember.
They don't always.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, the other
There certainly will be later when as yet unnamed character is around.
Oh, right, as yet unnamed character.
The observation room on the other side of the one-way mirror. You can hear what they're saying. So
Yeah, it's like through a speaker. Yeah.
Like at all times, maybe. But anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah, this was where Munch was being pushed by Pemberton. I think this could have gone wrong on set. Like, you saw him get genuinely pushed against that door, and his actual head does hit the door. Gone wrong.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many takes of that they did.
Or did you slam his head against
Yeah.
the wall?
Acting is a craft, Ben. Sometimes you have to injure yourself in the devotion to your craft. I have been injured acting before myself.
Because these days they might like cut around it where you like show the push and then it will like cut to another angle and then just see the person jolt against the door rather than so I'll give him a little bit of credit for that, but you know, health and safety. So how exactly did Frank screw it up? Just that he asked for a lawyer, that was it?
Yeah, which of course he could have done at any time, but what Munch is obviously in his frustration is kind of lashing out, and he's implying that, you know, once he was sort of breaking him down, that he didn't need to agitate him further. But, you know, there's no real way to know, you know, what if there's a different tactic that he could have used that would have gotten a confession. You know, it's kind of one of those, just sort of speculating.
What was the Pratt guy saying towards the end about, about why he would get off? What was he saying? He was talking about certain deals and pleas that he would say.
Yeah, well, he basically said they didn't have any evidence.
Right.
And I mean, when they mentioned, and he said they couldn't hold him, and when they said, you know, we hold you on the assault charge, he said, well, he would plea on that too, meaning he would plead guilty but to a lesser charge. He would have his lawyer make a deal with the prosecutor.
Right. I mean, and of course, that's different from the detectives, right? Okay.
Yeah. That's one area of several where Homicide is more realistic than Law and Order. Now I've been watching Law and Order, and there are some really good scenes in Law and Order. There's some great drama, but there's also some definite things that are not realistic. And one of them is they have several occasions where the police detectives are interviewing someone in the box with the suspect's lawyer present, and that's something that very rarely happens. From what I understand, it's like as soon as the suspect asks for the lawyer, well, at that point, the police detectives don't even talk to him anymore because it's basically their job is done. There's nothing else they can do.
Was that what you were playing a day or so ago? An episode of
Yeah.
It didn't sound as good as Homicide. It didn't sound as good as Homicide.
No, yeah, it's not. It's not, although it's better than plenty of other shows. And there is some good drama in there, and there's some good actors, for sure. I think Homicide did a better job casting guest actors. Like that's one of the weaker things in Law and Order is that some of their guest people aren't as good as the main cast is. But I think some of the main cast is pretty good. Most of the main people. I think the lawyer section of the show is a little bit more realistic. Not the courtroom scenes, not necessarily, but rather the exchanges that happen in chambers or, you know, behind closed doors. You know, the ones that are like lawyers talking to each other. There's a lot of kind of interplay in how they're discussing how to go about cases and making deals with people and things like that. So that aspect of it I like because that's something that's a little bit unique. Like there's not a lot of shows, at least that I've watched, that feature a lot of that. So I think Law and Order does a pretty good job of managing to cram quite a bit of stuff into one episode. Maybe a little too much sometimes. They would probably have done better to, you know, stretch it over more episodes, but I think they wanted to make it more episodic rather than serial like Homicide. So they don't, for the most part, continue cases in multiple episodes. They focus. They kind of use the dragnet method of making it where you follow one case over a longer period of time as opposed to following a period of time that covers several cases. So it's like your focus is on here's everything that they did to solve this case, and they don't show you what they're doing in the meantime on other cases. Whereas Homicide looked more from the point of view of let's show a period of time occurring and have and talk about the fact that they're sometimes doing stuff on more than one case at the same time. So,
do you think that was harder for the audience to understand?
Probably for some people, yeah. But I think on the other hand, for others, maybe not so much because, and not necessarily, I mean, for cops it wouldn't be obviously, but not necessarily just for cops. But I think when you do it that way, it actually seems more like you're following people through their regular job, because you're following, more of here's how the day goes as opposed to here's how this case goes. Because most people in their daily job don't think of their job as one thing that they were doing over a period of time. Now obviously, there are some jobs that are different, particularly like somebody who does contract work or things like that. Then there are things sort of like that where it's like, okay, I spent 6 months on this contract or whatever the deal is. So it is a little bit more like that. But in general, most people tend to think day to day in terms of their job. So on that sense, it's a little bit more relatable.
They don't have these things in England. They have like a letterbox. So like the newspaper boy or girl or the postman would actually go up to the door and post it through. So does this go up automatically? Is there like a that goes down and this red thing goes up?
I never thought, there's all the things that you never know, and I never thought I would be explaining mailboxes to somebody during a review of Homicide. No, as far, there may be some fancy electronic mailboxes out there somewhere, but I've never seen them. You just pull the flag up to indicate you have mail to go out. And then that way the mailman knows that you've got mail inside the box to be taken. If you don't, you just leave it down.
Oh. Oh, right. So you don't actually have a post office box?
Some people do.
No, I mean you don't go to a pillar box to post it in.
Some people do.
Some people do. For instance, I would if I had anything to mail.
See.
I live in an apartment building. There isn't a outgoing mailbox in our building, so I would have to go somewhere else to mail something out. Our mailboxes in the apartments are all like little locker things, skinny mailboxes. They don't have an option for sending mail out through those. But for houses, they usually do.
I didn't know that about us.
And some people's mailboxes are what you said earlier, that they are up on the door itself. So it kind of depends.
Interesting. For another time, perhaps. Right. Is this guy anyone special?
You tell me.
I mean, is he like a background guy or a cop or anything like that?
Oh, I don't know who the actor is. You got the pictures of the cast. It's probably in the end credits somewhere who he is, but
right.
Didn't recognize him myself. I found myself wondering why they still had the sex crimes cop on this part of it. Seemed like she would have gone back to her regular job once they got the other guy, because Pratt wasn't a sex offender.
Go, that's a bit like in the Plate 7 review when just giving Jenna something to do. Giving her something to do.
Yeah, well, it'd be one thing if it was a main character, but she was a guest character anyway. Like, why did they need to pay her for another episode? I mean, I guess to have the scene with the bearded guy infatuated by her, but I mean, anyway, I didn't think that added much. But
this guy's an interesting look.
I guess maybe they contracted her for 3 episodes and didn't know at the time they hadn't written everything and didn't know exactly how they were going to do it. So, who knows? Yeah, I like the part where he was telling the massage woman to be more specific, and then Frank sticks the gun and says, "Don't move or I'll shoot." And he says, "That's better." I like that. I don't know if that was in the script either, but if it was good writing. If it wasn't, it was good ad-libbing.
Was Buscemi also a comedian?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question. He's not a stand-up comedian, if that's what you mean, as far as I know. But he's a comedic actor sometimes.
Do you think a bit was cut out here? Just before this? It's when Munch said that, oh, he's going to go to the hospital. And then he has this weird... Do you think a bit was cut out?
Why?
It's just the way they just seem to. Why is he laughing? Because Munch is going to the hospital to visit Stanley.
Well, I think it was more sort of a nervous laugh because of what had just happened, and then Munch immediately was like, basically, like, you got a problem with that or something, you know? And Lewis is just like, no, man, you know. So it was more of that kind of reaction, rather than he was actually laughing because it was funny.
Oh, and the nice little production details on the fact that on his beard, whilst he's been, you don't necessarily see that all the while with productions that take less care. And then this is the guy, and it actually is that guy because I can turn the image.
Don't know whether they shot that scene last or first. You never know with television or movies. He might have died before he lived, as far as the episode goes.
Right.
There are characters I've heard about before that have been in episodes of things that the first thing they filmed was their death scene. So, for instance, Adrienne Hill, I believe her name was, who played Katarina on Doctor Who. The first thing that she did was record the scene where she got killed before she, because they were, you know, filming the stuff out of order, I guess, because they had, you know, whatever time in the film studio versus the videotape, and so she filmed all those scenes first, and it was two different stories because she was in the Mythmakers, and then she was in the Daleks' Master Plan. And she actually filmed her death scene before anything else. So she knew she was going to die. She was destined.
Now, unlike the guy, Mr. Pratt, I haven't read these books. I'm not the sort of person who would put... Because I'm honest as to why I have and have not read. Because the pages I do read, I mark... So, white pages unread. But the ones I do read, heavily marked up.
You've read at least part of all of those, right?
Well, that's a new one, so... Only a
table of contents.
Yes, but like it depends. Like, but when I do read, it's like what it says with the IMDb profile. What they do, look, they remember it because they like study it, and so it takes a long time. So that the benefit of my reading method is slowly, but I remember it.
Okay, whatever works.
Yeah, I think maybe what might make it slightly harder for me is that certain patterns of text, like black on white, causes interference patterns for me. It's an epilepsy thing. Right, I could probably give that about 8 out of 10. Actually, that character's rather disturbing. About the
yeah.
The person that pretends to be more intellectual than what they are, and then, well, why don't they just bother? If it's that important to them to appear that way, and he's not doing anything else, what is he doing when he's pretending to be intellectual then?
Probably most of the people he encounters, like, you know, the people he works with and stuff like that, he can impress them with his knowledge. He can sort of play that part, and they buy it because they don't really know any better. And when he comes against police detectives, then who do a little research, then it's easy for them to kind of knock him off that. But
I was just thinking, like, for his own self-image,
I liked the interspersing of the interviews with the cops. I think that was done in a way where it wasn't too intrusive or obtrusive, whatever the appropriate word is there. It was just enough of it that you had, and I liked I'm sure it was fun for Clark Johnson to film the one he got to do as Lewis because they could bleep out what he said, so he got to he got to say some things he doesn't normally get to say on TV because they could bleep them out. So.
But then they'll sort of maybe think, well, what if he's swearing there? Why doesn't he swear any other time?
Right. It's what they call suspension of disbelief. You just have to be like they can't. It's a network TV show, so there's certain things they can't show you. So you just sort of they cut around to the other things, just like. And there's precedent for that in real things on television, like sports, for instance, where they do things where they have the coaches or the players mic'd up, and then on network TV they'll say, okay, we've got such and such, this wide receiver in the football game mic'd up, and then they play like some stuff they said throughout the game. Well, obviously they're not going to play everything they said throughout the game because there's probably some things that receiver said or were said to him they're not going to play on network television, but they edit it so that you hear the things they can show you. And
sometimes.
So if you look at it that way, then you could say they're doing the same thing with a show like Homicide. They're showing you what they can show you of what happened in the set.
Well, sometimes get that in cricket where you hear them swear.
Sometimes you have a mic too close to something live. But Law and Order, actually, that one thing they did that was kind of clever like that is they actually filmed it where it sometimes looks like it's a movie that they had to edit for TV. And they'll have somebody who it's like they swear, but they change the audio. They change the picture so that you don't actually hear them say it. It changes to something else. I don't know how often they did that, but I've seen that a few episodes already where just watching from the beginning. So, like when you see a movie that's edited for
they cut it off.
Right. When you see a movie that's edited for television where they change, they tape, the other dialogue and they edit it over that. But you can still see if you're looking carefully, you can see that they still mouth the words that were in the movie version. In the theatrical version. And so Law and Order, at least in the first season, experimented with that by having scenes where, they're interviewing a suspect and they say something, you can tell that they cut it in a way that makes it look like, okay, we had to edit that for TV. So that was their take on, rather than bleeping things or whatever, or, they changed it like that. And so in a way, I think it was probably, I don't know if it was Dick Wolf's idea, he was the creator, or somebody else's, but it was almost sort of at the same time you're trying to have a serious show, a little bit of a parody of that technique, because sometimes they would change things to something that would probably not be that close to what somebody would actually say. So there are movies that are better edited for television than others, is what I'm trying to say, and some of the ones that are worse edited are really funny in terms of hearing the way they change dialogue. Like, for instance, Snakes on a Plane, that had a line where Samuel Jackson says something about monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I won't say what the original is, but
yeah. So anyway, so I enjoyed those little interspersed things with the reporter. It kind of gave some texture to the episode. I liked the fact that Bolander had another episode where he had to, it added some realism to have. It's not just like everybody just recovers and they're fine. It's like realistically, these people were shot and stuff can still happen to them. It plants that seed in the audience where you still don't know what to expect. You could be next episode, and all of a sudden, Howard goes into a shock because of her heart or something. You don't know that's going to happen because they've set it up basically you're still not feeling like everybody's okay, which is again like real life where you never know for sure what's going to happen. So even though you said at the beginning of the The City That Bleeds, when they got shot, that you would that it would be unrealistic if none of them died. So far, after 3 episodes, obviously that hasn't happened, but I would think you would probably agree that the way that what they have gone through has been realistically done. I would put it that way.
I don't think I said unrealistic. I just thought that it would be I think for some reason I said disappointing.
Yeah.
If
Well, and what I said at the time, and can still say, without spoiling too much, is that unlike some shows where it would be like the episode after this, all of a sudden everything's back to normal and nothing happened to anybody. There are still plenty of repercussions to come from the shootings and everything.
I liked how when they were interviewed by the media, they acted slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
All of the people interviewed,
yeah,
and you could see G being asked a somewhat pat question, "How do you feel?" That he's somebody who's had to deal with the media quite a bit and can able to go into that mode,
right?
Giving a polite answer. What
you can know.
How do you think I feel?
Right. He doesn't say that. Where like he would say that too. Like if Barnfather had asked him that,
Yeah,
which probably knows better than not to, then the reaction would have been a lot different, you know. Or if Bayliss or somebody had been even more different. But yeah, he's trying to keep the positive face for the media, and leave the sarcasm to Munch and the irritability to Lewis. And
yeah. So in a socionics theory, that would be an example of like the role function, where ESTJs can go into a little bit of FE.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think all Guardian types, whether they're thinkers or feelers, they do that some because it's just what you're supposed to do in certain situations.
Oh yeah, and that's what I think as well. So that's sort of something that overrides function. So for instance, theoretically, ISTJs have really weak FE, but they're actually very good with the polite stuff and the manners. But they do have a thing where they can still be psychologically closed. ISTJs.
Yeah, I think more with ISTJs, it's like they learn how to do that. They don't enjoy it, but they learn to do it because it's just what you're supposed to do in certain situations. So in many cases, I guess ISTJs that I've known, they can come across as where they kind of put stress on themselves because they do that, but they like repress themselves what to do that, and so it's sort of like they're tightening the grip on themselves when they do, and so it comes across as like they can be sort of induce their own stress by doing that. But we all have
very odd.
Like for instance, in this episode of Homicide, where Pimbleton has been, he's up until this point has been very singularly focused when he was trying to find the shooter of the cops. But towards the end there, he has a nice little temper tantrum, and he kind of lets out some of those things that when he's disoriented and he's no longer has that focus, then he kind of becomes a little bit manic, and he shoves Munch. He says, "I hate this job." He says, don't have me do anything else because I'll screw it up, and so he has a very emotional reaction. Which, like the reviewer said, it was ironic. I don't think it's ironic. It's just it's realistic, because the same person who can people have been were making remarks about, he's keeping his emotions in check, or he's not showing he's not acting like he cares. That's the only way that an ESFP can get a job done like that, is to not let those emotions hit you.
Well,
because if he did, he wouldn't be able to do it.
There's an old expression, bottling it up, and sometimes the bottle will break.
Right, and I think, as I was saying, I think ISTJs probably actually experience that even more, because they have a more natural thing of you're supposed to bottle things like that. Whereas with ESFPs, it's like more of the time we'll express those things, and so there's not as many times it has to be let out all at once, because it's like there's more natural ways of doing that.
And what I've noticed with ISTJs is they're not as good at bottling things up when they're not feeling very well.
True. And if you do things like threaten their family or stuff like that, because those will bring the emotions up when you put them in a position of having to defend their family, or the people they care about.
Right, so I think that's about it. You even got there, folks, a little bit of a benefit of some typology at the end, if anyone has got this far. Good luck to you.
And I give this episode a 9 out of 10 myself. I thought it was, as Ben said, Steve Buscemi's character is effectively creepy.
Yeah.
And you have, again, some, probably the best, interrogation scene or scenes since 3 Men and Adina, in the sense that there was this awkwardness, and you're not quite sure where it's going, and there's a sort of an unsatisfying conclusion. And then, the episode itself, you could say, to some people, maybe it's a satisfying conclusion because they wanted Pratt to be dead. But then again, you still don't know for sure that he did it. You don't know who killed him, and they don't know where it's going from there. So there's all this stuff that's, again, left kind of like they're not afraid to leave you feeling a bit uncomfortable, which to me is a sign of great drama. So.
Right, we can leave it there then.
All right, so join us next time for Law and Disorder.
Ooh, I wonder what this is about. Bye-bye.